Hey, everybody. Happy Wine Wednesday. Hope you're having a fabulous week and hope you brought some Seahorse questions. It's just open chat tonight. So I do have some news on my own end, but first, my little announcements. If you're watching or listening on Instagram, it's going to look funny because of the orientation. If you want to see us and be able to comment and converse with us, jump on over to YouTube, search Seahorse Whisperer, and the first thing you're going to see is us live. Well, I think there's a welcome, and then you'll see the live. Anyways, I'm sipping on my Chardonnay. I do have my trusty Seahorse glass from Holly here, but I don't use it because I don't want to mess it up. It just sits there and is with us. And let's see, I've got Ray with me, I've got Holly with me, I've got Cheryl with me. Still working on the not biology, the biological filter themed episode, so I can't announce the date for that yet. Still also working on the website, the database, hopefully to enter the information for Ray's project. Also still working on Seahorse Tours Part 4. I was telling the friends before we started here that I actually started working a part-time job. I'm still doing my computer programming, but that's just freelance, so it's like come and go, and I decided I needed to get off the tush and do something else. So I've got a little part-time job, and I worked a lot this week. Hi, Shyla. Hope you have a great week. What are you sipping on? And let's see. All right. So first of all, Holly, what did you want to say? Start us off.
Happy birthday to Aphrodite.
Aphrodite is the seahorse, my female seahorse from Holly, whom I have some news about that tank. But yeah, happy birthday to her. I'll have to take a picture and post it and, say happy birthday to her. But that's because that batch was born that day, Holly.
Yeah, so I still have 7 of them. I had sold the rest, so I've got 7 left here that I'm keeping. So they're doing well. They don't know it's their birthday, but they're having a good day.
We need to find some sort of treat or birthday, not a cake, but something we can throw in there for their birthdays.
Some
And
live food or something, probably
yeah.
next month because their mom Candy is turning 3 in November. And so maybe I'll cover all the seahorse birthdays and get them some live food.
So I'm
told
curious. Hi, see.
I told Holly to take him to a drive-in movie and put him in the back seat, and they
Yeah. I see Zen Ginger's with us again, and Melinda. Hello, everybody. Hope you're all having a good week. And I want to know, do you guys celebrate his birthday? I mean, maybe not celebrate, but do you put it on a calendar and say, wow, I've had these guys for 3 years? Or I just wondered if anybody else does that. I used to do it, and then when I started having a little bit of success with the batches, it was like, I don't know who's where.
Birthday
I
every
don't even
day.
know their names. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a lot of seahorses. I would still remember my main ones, my parents.
Mhm.
But anyway, Cheryl, you don't do that, do you? No, she can't keep up with that.
I'm laughing because when you've got 100+ seahorses and they're all doing well, and you're scrambling using Fritz Turbo Start and everything else to make sure you have enough tanks cycled, and then you're going, what am I going to do with all these kids? And the thing is, you can find homes for them. The hardest thing for me is letting go of them because I want to be sure they're going into good homes.
Of course.
And a lot of people don't always listen to what you tell them to do.
Yep.
And they end up with problems. And I had one lady, really sweet lady, bought 2 seahorses. Then they weren't doing well. Well, the reason they weren't doing well is she was getting pneumonia. She hadn't cycled properly, ignored my get Brits turbo started, etc. And then the next thing I know, she's ready to take them back, and she's got a wild caught pipe in there and several others, and it was a 26-gallon BioCube. And I told
Yep.
her we got way too many. Ultimately, what she ended up doing was passing the seahorses off to her sister-in-law, and they did great with her.
Great. Well, there you go.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I told her flat out, they're not going to survive in the tank that you've got.
Well,
some,
I'm go ahead.
yeah, sometimes you have to be kind of blunt. It depends on the person.
Yep.
And it's hard for me because I put in so much work to raising them, and every
You
one of
want them to
them
be.
means the world to me.
Sure, absolutely. And my comments about, I have two, remind me guys, two. One update is about the tank and the Robert King char chamber, and the other is about my breeding problems. But Ray, I do want to give you a chance to pipe in real quick. Anything new with you? How's your boy? Is he still doing all right?
Yeah, he's still the same, no change.
Still kicking. Okay. And how old is he again?
7 in December.
Yep. So he's
Yeah.
he's still
But
kicking.
I don't
Wish
know
it
what
was.
day.
Yeah, you don't know a day, just the month. Close
I can look it
enough.
up in the files.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's one of those things where when you put in so much effort to raise them, and then people don't follow
Yeah.
the latest state of the art and do what they need to do, it gets kind of frustrating at times. But you can't get mad at them. You have to teach them.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Cheryl. Absolutely. And actually, okay, I'm gonna go. You guys can tell I'm anxious. I'm biting at the chomp here to tell you my news. Okay, so first of all, you guys, anybody who watches usually knows that I set out to show that you can be really successful long term in a smaller size tank. I followed the guide. I did want to do something without a sump because a lot of people, are in apartments or whatever, they just don't want to do the sump. And I definitely prefer sumps, let me tell you. A lot more work without one. But I just wanted to show that you could. So I got the 40-gallon all-in-one. I'm not going to ramble on and on, but it's got a skimmer rated time and a half. It's got a sock on one end with some aquachar in it. It's got a Robert King chamber in the tank. It's got rock in the tank. Then it's got a K1 filter and a UV sterilizer, all in this 40-gallon all-in-one, right? And there's 3 seahorses, 2 females and a male. Well, first of all, after I added the Robert King char chamber, all of a sudden my tank was looking a lot cleaner. I mean, it's got algae on the rocks, but I just don't care about that. This is I'm my goal for this tank was not pretty, right? We talked about that I think last week or the week before. It depends on what you're doing it for, and I wanted fry again. I wanted them to breed. So my tank is basic balls. I mean, rocks, clear colored shower curtains, and then all the machinery in the back chamber, all in one. And then the Robert King bubbler, for fun. That's it in this tank. And a big yellow fake plant that they love. So, anyways, all of a sudden, after I added the Robert King chamber, the tank got really clear water, and I was telling you guys that I started on my weekly water change. I felt like I started to slack, right? Like I wasn't doing as much big of a water change or this or that or the other. And Ray got on me and said, "You can't do that. You have to keep it up. Just because it looks clearer, there's stuff you don't see, right?" Well, it came back to bite me in the butt. And even though I had the chamber in there and all that, I hadn't added new char to the Robert King chamber, and I had the same aqua char in the sock forever, and I hadn't changed the sock. I skipped a couple of weeks, which you can't do. And so, anyways, long story short, I woke up and the tank was cloudy, and I was like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me!" And for 2 reasons, I think the tank was cloudy. Number one, everything that Ray said about quit slacking, Kelly. Do your dang water changes. Don't count on machines to do it. Do it yourself because you're in a smaller tank, right? You can get away with stuff like that when you're in a large volume of water with a sump, but when you're in a small tank, it's up to you to do the maintenance. So I'm proving that point right now. And number 2 is the K1 reactor got stuck again, right? I realized that no matter what, I must be buying just cheap air pumps or something because every few months, the K1's not spinning anymore. And as Dan has told us, that's not going to be it just, when it's not spinning, it's just kind of acting like rock instead of K1, but stuff does get built up in there. So without me having checked it, without me having known how long it was sitting there not spinning, I don't know how much that affected it. Anyways, to solve that problem, I did a big water change. And see, when the tank's cloudy, though, it's usually because I don't want to say a mini cycle going on, but things have built up and it's overwhelming the tank, right? So the good bacteria is trying to chase to catch up, and then it's an overpopulation of something, right? and it's usually bacteria. So doing a large water change can also end up making the bacteria want to explode even more. So I did the large water change. I also rinsed out the aquachar that was in the sock, added a new sock, and added the Robert King chamber again. But I switched out some of the char in there too. And it took maybe like a day and it was fixed. But now, so I'm just telling this whole story. First of all, don't be too upset if this happens to you in a smaller tank. And this is what happens in a smaller tank. Okay, don't slack. And then the second, and actually, do you guys want to discuss that at all? Anything anybody has to say about that?
Well,
You guys think I was right?
I've been experimenting with the aquachar chamber, and RC sent me everything.
Yep.
The tank that is in is crystal clear. I mean, it looks like diamonds. It is so clear.
How long have you had the? How long have you had the chamber, Shelley?
About a month and a half is all.
Okay, because I can't remember. Holly, do you remember how often he said to like?
I was
not all of it, but just some of the char.
Well, I was just on Aquachar's site because I need to buy more. So I'm kind of planning for that. I'm behind on my first batch of Aquachar.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have had the RK chamber. I want to say it's about 2 months, maybe 3 now.
Yeah,
I can't.
You had it a little longer than me.
Yeah, so right about there. But on the Aquachar site, it says every 3 to 6 months, and they have more directions on there than they used to have. I noticed when I went, because I hadn't been on that site in a while, and it's very detailed now. So it actually gives directions for changing it out, and it's 3 to 6 months.
Exactly. Depends
Well,
on
that's
your working density and your overall filtration that you have in the system.
right.
But
Well,
I'm
that's
actually,
what. But go ahead.
I'm very impressed with what I'm seeing. I mean, at first, I got a little bit of detritus in there, and since I mean, it is crystal clear water. And
Yeah,
I'm
I know. I
really
agree.
impressed.
I'm gonna message Robert King though, because I totally agree with you on the Aquachar site, Holly. But with
This
the
is the
chamber,
same. This is the same.
it says 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, because he
Okay.
did give me, I got directions for that too. And it's the same. It's basically the life of the Aquachar.
So he said, so basically every 3 to
Mhm.
6 months, when you start seeing the tank not look perfect again, you're supposed to just take out a little, replace a little, and leave a little in there, right?
Yeah, it's got directions. I think it's like a quarter of it
I believe
Okay.
that's right.
or
Yeah, that's
something.
Well, I'll
About
tell you guys, that's
5%.
probably where I messed up, because again, I was slacking. So I haven't done anything with the chamber besides put it in. Salty Reef, hey Salty, said how did you pre-cycle the media? Well, the rock and the K1 I pre-cycled before the tank was ever set up in buckets, right? With the ammonia and the testing and all that. So the rock was pre-cycled, the K1 was pre-cycled. This tank is, well, Aphrodite's been in there
2 years.
almost 2 years. Yeah. So
No, 1.5, because she was 5 months, I think, when I sent her to you, 5 or 6 months.
so this tank's already going
About
on 2
year
years.
half.
It's not with the cloudy. I honestly think it's number one that I was kind of slacking on changing my sock and doing water changes, because the K1 and the Robert King chamber was making it look so good. I was just slacking. That's number one. And number two, I haven't added any bacteria lately. I usually dose my tanks with bacteria, especially a smaller tank. Not a lot, just like once every few months, I'll just dump some in, either Fritz or Dr. Tim's. And I mean, when we get Dr. Tim in here, what's his name? Scott from Fritz? I can't even remember, but we can get some of these people in here and chit chat about how the tank should be dosed or whatever. But I haven't been doing that, and I didn't with the Aquachar and the Robert King Chamber Salty Reef. It's a little bit different. The way that Aquachar is that it starts off working just like a carbon, right? It's better than carbon. You'd have to go to the site to get all the details. I'm not scientific, but it's better than carbon and check out. And basically The kicker is that you could leave it forever because it turns into like biological media. And so the benefit of the Aquachar is it's a biomedia and a chemical media. So it's pulling with the chemical property and feeding the bacteria in the bio. So it's, anyways, so it works a little bit different. It doesn't need pre-cycled or anything. But as they were just explaining, I was supposed to replace a little bit every 6 months. And I
Well,
had
telling
touched.
you,
Wait.
mine is
Let
not
me finish.
replaced at all in 2 years.
That's what I was going to say. The actual Aquachar that's in the sock, I haven't touched since I got it. So, I mean, it's just working like that part is just working like biomaterial. But I'm gonna replace. I did replace some in the char chamber, and I'm gonna replace some of the in the sock. But anyways, go ahead. Were you gonna say something else, Holly?
There's directions also on the Aquachar site. You can renew it.
Yeah, I know.
So you use peroxide and stuff. So yeah, I need to do all that, but I just haven't bought anymore was the thing. I don't have enough to switch them out. So I just haven't. But like you were saying, it doesn't hurt anything. It's just not functioning as, as well as it could be.
Right. And I'm curious, what you guys, Salty, I see you in the audience, but remember, and your questions are excellent, and I'm going to answer them. But this is a going on 2-year tank, and for it to get cloudy all of a sudden, I'm just guessing it's something I did that caused like a mini cycle, like just not keeping up enough, and then the bacteria bloom. It's a bacteria bloom, I know it is, and the fact that the K1 wasn't tumbling anymore. I know Dan says that doesn't really hurt anything, but I feel like the whole point to K1 is that it knocks against. So if it's not knocking against each other, then the stuff's building up in there. So I don't really know. We need to get Dan in here. But to answer Salty's questions, did you cure your rocker media before setting up the tank? Yes. So the K1 was in a bucket. It was tumbled constantly. I used ammonia to cycle. The rock was rock that I had in a Seahorse, not reef tank. Like it was in my Barbori tank. It was a rock from there. And it had dried out completely. And then I did cure it and then recycled it before the tank was ever set up. So that was like these are great questions, but this isn't like a new tank bacteria bloom. It's a 2-year tank, not bacteria bloom. You also said, how long did you run your tank without lights? I don't think I even had a light when I added the Seahorses. So I ended up getting a light. The light's not, it's just a cheap one. But this is, just Seahorse only tank. So maybe the light is too strong. I'll get with you on the side. And then you asked, yes, but did you cure your rocker media before you put it in the tank? Yes, I did. And you have come on and explained the difference between curing and cycling. But this, and I can't remember the exact details. I know curing is basically where
with bleach and all that.
No, well, the curing is when it sits in salt water for a long time, right? Or am I wrong here? I always get it all mixed up, the curing stuff. Salty, give us a description. I know we go back and watch the episode with Salty because he explained it in detail. I just never remember. But it dried. I don't think I bleached it. I think it just dried, but it was in a Seahorse tank to begin with. It dried and sat dry forever, and then added in water, and I cycled it in water. So maybe I didn't cure it, but I didn't have any problems in the other tank either. And I'm not really having any problems besides this bacteria bloom, which I think really seriously is because of the K1. But great questions. Tell us the difference in curing. Somebody tried to talk. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the tank that I added the Aquachar filter to has been set up for over 5 years. It's my grow out tank, and it's a 58 gallons. Sometimes I will have 30 or more Seahorses in that tank. And I can truthfully say, after I added the Aquachar, at first it started to get a little cloudy, which would make sense since I was adding new filtration that was going to leach stuff. As of this point, that tank is crystal clear. I mean, I'm talking fresh water type crystal clear, and it's staying that way.
Right. And I did want to mention, thank you for bringing that up, Cheryl, because I did want to mention that the way that because you're asking about curing and stuff, Salty, and the Robert King chamber has Aquachar in it, and it's got a sponge at the bottom, and it bubbles, right? I'll try to post when we're done. And I had it in the back chamber, just because it was a piece of equipment, and I added it to the front chamber because the Seahorses like the bubbles, right? But when I got the Robert King chamber ready, so he says you can just throw it in the tank. You don't need to even rinse it. It's not like charcoal that you need to rinse, right? But I did. I put it in a tank. I put it into when I did a water change. I had the water change water, the dirty water, in a bucket. I stuck the Robert King chamber in, and I let it bubble until, because it will release some of the dark black stuff. But all of this stuff, the Robert King chamber has been in my tank for probably 6 months. So I really don't think that's the problem. And all your questions are amazing, but this is a 2-year tank. Anybody with a new tank, think about these questions he just asked. But in my case, I really do kind of feel like it's just that the K1 stopped tumbling and I didn't notice. I was slacking on water changes, haven't added any good bacteria, and what was the other thing? That I hadn't replaced any of the aquachar in the Robert King chamber. I don't think any of those 4 things were the reason. I just think I'm not used to keeping a small tank, right? And I think the whole of it goes down to what Ray said, that I've been slacking. But I'm curious to anybody watching or anybody who watches later, put something in the comments. Do you have more trouble with the smaller tank? I'm trying to prove you can do it. Obviously you can do it, but it just seems like I do seem to have more problems more often because there's not a sump that I can do stuff with and not as much water to do stuff with. Ray, any thoughts, comments?
Well, I agree. Smaller tank can be more problematic. That's why I say you just can't let up. In my opinion, you shouldn't even let up on a larger tank. You do the work
Right.
that should be done, and if you don't, well, that's your fault.
Right. Well, but cloudy water equals bacteria bloom, right? I know Tyann, and I hope you guys. Okay.
A lot of times it can be just a die off of something that has happened because you haven't done something, or because maybe you did something wrong, and that die off can cloud the tank all up. A bacterial bloom, one way to know for sure if it's a bacterial bloom is to stick a UV on it. Well, UV doesn't fix the type of parasite that get to our seahorses. It will kill off
Kill
a
bacteria.
bacterial. And
Well, there's a UV in the tank, so.
there is a UV in the tank.
Yep.
And it didn't clear it off.
Well, it's been running the whole time, so I guess it wouldn't.
Either the UVs no longer got the strength on the bulb anymore. Like, I don't know, the average bulb I think is good for about 80 hours. And if you're running it full time, they don't last very long.
Well, that's probably another number 5. I need to replace the UV bulb. Gosh, I'm sad, Ray. Finish what you're saying.
But if the UV is still effective and it's not killing off, then it's not a bacterial bloom. It's something that's died off and clouded the water. Usually that type of thing, though, if you take a sample of it and leave it for a couple days put it in a jar and leave it sit, you'll see some settlement will happen from that.
Okay, well,
If it's a bacterial bloom, you'll have to wait till it dies off before you'll see any settlement.
Well, has anybody and I'm going to read Salty's comments in a minute, because he said a UV is not a fix for all this. I think Ray was just saying that you can tell if it's a bacterial bloom.
Yeah,
right.
You have to fix the problem.
Right, and I'm curious if anybody using K1 has ever had it stop spinning and not notice for a minute, because I'm wondering. Dan said that there should not be a die off if it stops tumbling, but I'm wondering why wouldn't there be?
Why should there be? Because you still have some circulation in there, and it takes an awful long time to use up all the oxygen that's in there. Like with that K1, it doesn't take care of the anaerobic because you're putting oxygen in all the time. There's not enough to get that anaerobic capability. So for it to die off, it has to use up all the oxygen first before it's going to kill it off, and that's not something that's going to happen in a hurry.
Okay, well then,
You would have noticed, at least I think you would have noticed that it wasn't working in less time than it would become a problem.
okay, well, no, you're probably, I'm sure you're right. You know it all, but I just, I'm gonna have to buy like some crazy expensive pump because this keeps happening. Every pump I put on it, it ends up not, I don't know if it's because it's a homemade version or what, but every pump I've put on it within, so many months, I go over to the tank one day and it's no longer tumbling and it's at full speed. And I'm like, what the hell? But Salty said, in my opinion, the aquachar will not help with nutrients trapped in the rocks. Smaller tanks will prove my opinion. You could be right because I don't think I did remove the excess nutrients from the rock because I didn't bleach it. So I didn't cure it properly, right? So you could be right. There is some algae on the rocks. I've never, really cared. So it was whatever. But you also said cloudy water could be a dirty tank. And that's what I bet it boils down to is just that I was slacking. And you said UV is not a fix, right? Ray said it was just like to diagnose the problem. So, anyways, I'm going to do all of the things we just talked about. I'll let you guys know, but I am curious, who's being successful with smaller tanks. What are you doing to be successful? Because I'm trying to prove obviously it is possible. I just keep having it's not crazy issues. The seahorses are all right, but it's just a pain in the butt, man. It's less it's technically less work because I'm dealing with less water, but it's just more often. It's
Mhm.
constant. Something's wrong, or something's not spinning, something's not. What I got to try to change a bulb, and so. Hi, Daniel.
I
Talking about.
use that pump that actually I think you had some like that. The metal
Yep.
one that has all the different outlets. I've been using that with my display tank. It's got 6 outlets and I put like one of them to the K1. And I did notice one time it had stopped spinning, but I check it all the time, so I know it was only for a short while,
Mm-hmm.
not even probably a couple hours. But what that issue was the airline because the pump vibrates. The
Yep.
main airline was coming detached from the pump, and I
Mm.
had to zip tie it to tighten it up.
Oh, that's interesting. I can check that. And
My little pumps, I've noticed they don't work as well. Yeah, the air is not as good. So maybe hook it to one of your better pumps.
that's
Well,
I've been wanting. Hang on, I've been wanting to follow your footsteps and use that pump because I have one, and I know we had almost a whole episode about detracting the air and all that stuff because my first problem was I didn't have 5, 6 things I needed. I am lazy. I still have not gotten the piece to make to detract.
To attach it.
But I will, and that's instead of buying a new pump, just use that one, and I will do that by next week. Whoa! What happened? What happened? What
nothing.
happened? Okay, sorry, it was on my
Nothing I
end.
can see. I like that one's adjustable too. Every single valve is adjustable, the airflow. And yeah, I'm loving that pump. And I think it was only $27 for that. And it's
Mine
pretty
was more, but mine was more. Ray
Well,
wants to make a. Oh, okay. Cheryl's been trying to talk. Let Cheryl go, and then Ray has a comment. Go ahead, Cheryl.
one thing to keep in mind when you're running something like a K1 media reactor that is dependent on O2 saturation and basically running air through it
Mm-hmm.
is given time within any saltwater system, your tubes are going to start clogging up because they're eventually going to build up a residue,
Ah.
basically a hard saltwater residue. When that happens, you're really dramatically reducing the efficacy of what the system is supposed to do. And I see it all the time in my tanks where I have to go in and replace airlines to I use plastic tubes that are used for electrical issues. And I can see a dramatic difference as they start to plug up and how the tank is functioning because it's not getting the air that it needs flowing through the K1. That's
I'm
also going to be a
curious.
factor with the aquachar because
Right.
again, you're running an airline through it. So you really, I think one of the biggest failures a lot of people have is just not clearing out the airlines.
Okay, so 2 questions. First of all, how often do you change your tubes? Your airline tubes?
It depends on the pump and how much flow I'm running through it.
Okay.
I check them daily to see if they have any reduced flow. If they have any reduced flow, I immediately remove them. I thoroughly clean them out and put them back in. And it only takes a matter of minutes because the salt creep that gets stuck on the inside is easy enough to clean out with a brush.
So is the place that I should check where if it's stuck or not, like where it's going into the K1? Because I'm not understanding why it should get gunked up. It's coming from an airline to a plastic
You're,
bottle.
you're not going to
Part
see it.
that's underwater is gonna
Oh,
get.
the part that's underwater. Okay, that's what I
Yeah,
wanted. Good.
you're not going to see it, but where it's going to clog up throughout the entire tube. I typically buy kind of in bulk the electrical tubing that you can get it like Home Depot or places like that, and that's what I use for my rigid airlines coming off or actually into them from the flexible airlines and the pump. And most often it's going to clog up close to the joint between the soft airline, the flexible airline, and the hard airline.
Sorry,
I've
I was
never in 20 years of seahorse keeping cleaned an airline.
really. That's so interesting.
And I'm not talking like I'm down to one tank now, but that's the first time since the very first when I started that I've been down to one tank. Usually I was minimum 4 tanks, and that's not counting all the fry tanks and fry
Yeah,
rearing containers.
it depends on the size of airline you're using.
Well,
I'm
that could
using
be
the standard I think it's 3/16.
Mhm.
well, but that
Mind
is
you,
I don't clean mine either, but I do replace them now and then if like, it's the ones I find that are outside the tank that I sometimes need to
That's where you run
replace.
into
Ones
problems.
that I don't use all the time, they're not running stuff all the time.
mm. Well, I was going to say Cheryl's point's good though, because I have noticed that when I made my K1 media reactor, I used a smaller size airline tube. So when I attach it to any pump that I've bought, it's a really tight fit. And what I did notice is sometimes when it stops working, I can cut the piece that attaches to the airline and I reattach it, and all of a sudden it works again. So could
Yeah,
it be that my hose is too small? Period.
you use a larger bore hole, yes, and that's. I'm kind of fanatical because I've been doing this for so many years that I'm used to using the smaller tubes. The larger tubes will work better.
Okay, gotcha. All right, and Zen Ginger, I see you're just listening intently. I know we're kind of going all over the board. I've got to in just a second, and you should definitely pay attention to Salty's questions. And before you set up your tank, search on my channel for episodes where we talked about cycling and all that stuff because his questions were good. Curing and cycling the rock or whatever you're going to use as media is really important before setting up for seahorses. Ray, you had a rock question or comment. Go ahead.
yeah, I bought all my rock when I first started in the salt water back 30 years ago. I'm still using it. I have never ever done something called a cure, getting rid of nutrients.
Well, I'll tell you, when I set up my first reef tank, I did not cure the rock, and I had so many algae problems because the rock was leaching phosphate. So you might have gotten lucky, Ray, but you use live rock, right?
Yes,
See, I don't ever use live
I've
rock.
never used anything like K1 or anything like that. The only extra thing I've ever put in a tank is carbon, and I used to do that without a reactor, but then I got a reactor to use for it. So I'll change the carbon and that periodically in there when I figure it's running out of its useful time period. But I've never ever remove nutrient from rock. Now, mind you, when I first started, um, back around 93 or 94, I had massive hair algae problem in my main reef tank.
Yeah.
And I never, well, I spent hours and hours scrubbing the damn stuff to get it off. And then when
there.
we talked with Randy Holmes Farley one time, he was saying, well, if you don't put the nutrient in the tank, the algae is going to die off once it's down to a level that it can't sustain the growth. So I quit doing the scrubbing, and I started paying attention to what I was feeding the tank. Now, mind you, this was a 90-gallon reef tank at the time, and so I started paying attention to what I put in the tank. The damn green hair algae all disappeared.
Well, all I got to say is you got lucky as heck because
It took a couple months. Took a couple months for it to happen, though.
I hear you, but I'm telling you, my tank proved that if you buy the wrong live rock, because my reef tank I did set up with live rock initially, and it was a disaster. It wasn't just green hair algae. I had this one huge rock in the middle that was definitely, absolutely, without a doubt, leaching phosphate, right? So if you get live rock that's leaching phosphate, you can control the nutrients. You can do this. You can use peroxide to kill all the algae. It's not going to matter because the phosphate's coming from the rock. I'm telling you, he's not. But you can get lucky. A lot of people like using live rock. That's fine. But ever since that reef tank, I've never used live rock again. Salty, you can. Salty is describing how you can take live rock and cure it and then use it, or you can bleach it and recycle it and use it. But I just like getting dry rock. It takes longer to cycle, but I pre-cycle it in a bucket and then in the tank. But I would never use live rock again, ever.
I actually make my own live rock because I'll take dead rock, dry rock, has nothing in it. I'll bleach it, I'll rinse it, I'll hit it with safe to make sure, safe to make sure there's no chlorine. And then I'll leave it sitting outside in the South Texas heat at 90 to 100 degrees for a week. Then I put it in a tank, and that's when I start hitting it with bacteria and other stuff. And so I know the rock is clean. And if I start getting green hair algae, the first thing I do is I pull that rock out, I scrub it down, I treat it, and I use another rock from the rock tank to replace it because it can be a real pain. I don't deal with those kind of problems anymore, but I certainly used to have all kinds of problems with green hair algae and stuff.
Right. And Salty said that's why I prefer curing live rock. Sorry, I can't talk tonight. It's so much better to pre-treat, to do something ahead of time, be preventative instead of reactive. For sure, I agree. That reef tank was, it ended up gorgeous and it was a wonderful tank for years, but my God, at first it was so much trouble. And Zen Ginger, I'm thinking it would be really fun if you're ever in a mood. You don't even have a video, but one week that you're available, you should jump in here and I can talk with you before that week. And you should write up some new questions, like any question you have about setting up for seahorses. And we can have a Q&A with you where your voice is heard, or your video, if you're willing, where you can ask us everything and anything you want to know about setting up. That would be so much fun because it's hard to do when you guys are in the comments. We're always here to answer questions, but let me know if you're interested, because that would be amazing to have you in here and just go back and forth, with all of us. That'd be so much fun. But go ahead.
One of the other things that you have to deal with rock is aptasia, hydroids, just all kinds of pests. And the thing is, the stores are going to sell you, quote, their live rock, but they're not going to be talking about what else is on that rock. And that's another reason why anything that goes in one of my tanks is going to get treated for everything under the sun and then sit out in the sun and so on before they go in, because I'm not going to deal with Aptasia. I'm not going to deal with hydroids. I'm not going to deal with bristleworms or any of this kind of stuff. I refuse to do it.
Oh well,
And
and with things like aptasia, though, that's a really interesting topic. We're going to take this question, Shiloh's question. Then I'm dying to tell you my seahorse news, guys. But interesting point, Cheryl, because with aptasia can live through almost anything hidden within a rock. It
Yeah.
encases itself in its little ball of goopy nastiness, and it can sit out. It can be dry. It can be everything, and then you put it in a tank, and all of a sudden there's nutrients in the tank, and it comes out. I'm
I
telling
have
you, it
to
can.
say, I started with live rock, and the thing was, I enjoyed it at first because the thing is, when you're new to the saltwater hobby,
you
it's
thought it was pretty.
exciting to see what comes out of the rock. Yeah, the
Right.
critters are cool, even if they're little aptasias or the bristleworms or whatever. It's interesting and cool. But then, you know, as you get used to it, and then the pests start to come out, and you have the sea, then it's a pain in the butt.
Yep.
So I mean, live rock, I've mixed feelings about it because I got rid of all mine, as you guys know. I ended up going all artificial, but it was fun doing that way in the beginning when it started growing the coralline algae on it, and
Hmm.
all the little critters started coming out. You're like, "What's this?" And then you look it up online to see what it is, and it's fun, but I
We've
think
all been there, Holly. We've all
yeah.
been there. Don't beat yourself
So you just have to kind of know, kind of what it's about, I think. And I would say if you're starting out for the first time, with saltwater, it might be cool to have a tank that you have some live rock just to enjoy it, but know that if you're gonna do seahorses and other things,
Okay. Okay. I agree now.
might come. I mean, when I was pulling pests out of my tank, Scott made his own little tank. It
I
was a
was gonna.
2 gallon, and he was keeping aptasia and bristleworms in his
My
little.
friend did an aptasia tank. There's nothing wrong with that. And actually, I was going, no, 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 no. I disagree.
But he
But I
loved
do
it.
agree. I do agree. If you're doing salt water for the first time, the stuff, I mean, if you talk to Chad Clayton and people like that, and you're talking about a reef tank, he's going to say, yeah, live, all the critters that come out, you can end up with copepods. And
Mhm,
Salty pointed out, if you cure rock, then you won't
mhm.
end up with those pests, absolutely, but you won't get the fun of them if you're into the pests. But
Yeah,
all I
the
would say
pests can
is,
be cool too.
with seahorses, if you're setting up a specific for seahorses tank, I would absolutely say do not start with live rock that's not at least cured
Mhm,
or dried and then
mhm,
recycled, because number one, the phosphate problem, you just don't want to deal with all that. And I mean, you're dealing with enough paying attention to the seahorses. And I
mhm.
can't tell you, in all the seahorse groups I'm in, every single day there's, hey, what's this thing in my tank? And you're like, oh. And
Yeah.
sometimes they're cool little critters, and sometimes they're a crab that's gonna eat a fucking. Oh, excuse me. Sorry,
Yeah,
cursing now.
you've got about
I'm passionate
80%.
about this.
Yeah,
It's something that's going to hurt the seahorses, right?
you've got about an
So,
80% chance that it's going to prove lethal to the seahorses if you're not careful
Mhm.
and
right.
you're not
If you're,
paying attention. This is why everything that goes into one of my tanks starts out. You are being sterilized
yeah,
before you go near one of my tanks. And it's one of those things I think Ray will probably agree to it also that
Ray said live rock. Come on,
prevention
man.
is much
I've
easier.
never ever had a tank without rock.
Right.
It
But what,
rock is my biological filtration in every
Yes.
single tank I've ever had.
no,
Mhm.
I agree,
Yeah.
Ray. We're just talking about whether or not you should, and you said you've never cured, but curing is kind of a newer thing,
But I
anyways.
have sterilized
There
for,
you go.
but
Okay.
only
Bingo.
I sterilized it
That's
for the
Bleach.
seahorse tanks.
Right.
that's exactly what I do also, Ray. And
Yeah.
that's what my point that I'm trying to make is unfortunately what happens is somebody goes into a pet fish store they've been wanting seahorses. They have a tank they're setting up. Well, you need to buy this live rock. So they buy the
Right.
live rock. Then you need to do this, and they do that. The next thing they know, they've got dead seahorses because they've got aptasia, hydroids, and everything else in there.
Yeah.
And they are not aware that not sterilizing this stuff ahead of time will make a huge difference in their success. And it's one of my
Sure.
frustrations
And I
because I
would say so.
people,
Sorry.
but they don't always listen.
Right. Salty, it looks like we're going to have to do another episode with you where we come in and talk to us about curing and cycling. And we do have a bunch of episodes, guys. If you go on to the channel, the YouTube channel, and go into the channel, I'll show you guys right now. Here we go, real fast. I'll show you what
I
I'm
would
talking
go
about.
in with a whole new system on that
Okay,
question.
hang on, Cheryl. So if you go to the channel, right, and you're a new person, you see this, then you see we're live right now. Don't look at that crazy face. But anyways, if you go over here, there's a search. And if you search for cycling, right, let's spell it right, cycling, you're going to get everything from my channel. So the great episode with Dan, where he talked about cycling a seahorse, I think that was the one with Salty. I mean, you're going to get stuff that's they're salty. You get the videos that pertain to cycling. There's the char chambers, right? So if you don't search up here on YouTube, go to the Seahorse Whisperer channel and search in here. You could do new Seahorse. I don't know how much this will work, but let's see. Yep, see, so it's going to show you anything that's
I'll
got
set
to
up a new
do.
tank, yes.
So go to the channel, and then you might have to look the arrows over, but you can go over to the search button. I need to fix that so it's not way over here. But yeah, do it that way, and you can find, hydroids. Let's see, just real quick. There we go. Wednesday hydroids. Some of them won't be related, but that means we've only talked about hydroids once. Is mainly it. So just wanted to show you guys that because you can always find information that way. And go ahead with your comments. We're going to ask Shiloh's question, and then I got to give you my seahorse news. Cheryl, were you trying to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, prevention is 1,000 times easier to deal with than correction, particularly with a saltwater tank. And this is why we tell people, take your time, set it up slowly, buy a couple of fish, let it cycle for 6 months, maybe add some more nitrofine bacteria if you plan on adding like a pair of seahorses or something like that. But take your time. People that get in a hurry are people that are going to run into problems.
Sure.
And when you run
Absolutely.
into problems, it is a disaster for the keeper because they were thought they were doing things right. And they didn't realize that they were actually infecting the tank with something that could kill the seahorses.
Right. Well, I saw Zen Ginger said that you're going to try to work up the nerve to come on one week, and I know it's a while off, but you could write up your questions and come on even before you're ready to do your tank, just saying. Or if anybody watching this, if you know someone that, if you are getting ready to set up a seahorse tank or you know someone who wants to, tell them to message me on Facebook or contact me in any way possible, because I would love to have new people, even a couple new people, come in with written out questions and that we can answer. Because it's easy for us to sit here and say, well, you need to cycle the tank, cure the rock, you need to do this, you need to do that. But a lot of people are like, what does that even mean? And then we say 30-gallon minimum for a pair, but look at all the troubles I'm having with my 40-gallon all-in-one, right? So a conversation is better than just asking a question and getting a bunch of answers, I think, because then you can come back and say, well, what do you mean by that? So I hope you will message me if you're interested, anybody, not just Sun Ginger. And I got to get to Shiloh's question. She asked, how long can we keep salt water before using it for a water change? I've been slacking on maintenance and wondered if I should be making new salt water or use what I already have. And I have an answer, but Ray, what did you say? Ray?
Sorry?
What did you say about Shiloh's question about holding salt water?
Oh, I've had salt water sitting around for months before I've used it.
Anyone
The only
else have an
problem
answer?
you can run into is if you're looking after a reef tank And if you're leaving it sitting in a container, then you can get some precipitation of the calcium. So your calcium levels will drop, but that doesn't mean a damn thing for a Seahorse tank.
Okay. Anybody else have a comment?
The only other problem with, depending on how long it's been sitting there, if it's sitting in an open container, it's going to ultimately collect dust, detritus, etc., which could modify not only the pH but the specific gravity, and that would be my concerns.
Well, specific gravity, you're going to be checking that anyway. Like if I
Before
leave
you
it
add
sit there, like I've got some sitting right now, it's been there for an awful long time. Before I actually do it, I'm going to check the specific gravity, and I'm going to add the RODI to bring it up or bring it down to what it should be.
Because of evaporation. But this is a perfect point of conversations better than just asking, because Ray's answer was, oh, I keep salt water for months. But if someone didn't know, oh, you better check the specific gravity before you use it, because evaporation happens and the salt doesn't evaporate, just the water. So great showing that conversation works. Holly, I feel
like
you're
Cheryl said, I would keep it covered. Like I keep mine in covered buckets, and that way the dust and stuff from the house doesn't fall in there.
Right.
I keep mine in 55-gallon barrels.
Okay, so here's my comments. Oh, go ahead, Cheryl.
If you've got an open container of salt mix, and you're walking by, and all of a sudden you drop your sandwich in there.
Are you looking at me?
Threw it all out. But the thing, my point is, there's other things that fall into a container of salt mix that can prove fatal depending on what it is.
Even water. Like if you get water in your salt mix, it clumps up, and I don't know if that's still good or not. Can you use clumped up salt to make salt water?
I'm the nut. I live on a well, okay, which means I have contaminants in my water, and I have checked multiple stages in each stage of the specific gravity, etc. But I also I have started out with six thingy RODI unit. I added an external filter as the first filter, which is a 100 micron filter, because I know I have crap in my water.
Yeah, but my question was with salt mix. If say I've got such a humid house, it could happen just sitting there, and if I have salt that's clumped, does it still work?
Depends just how bad the clumping is. If it's and if it's clumped from humidity, it's not so bad as long as it doesn't go too long. But if you spill water into dry salt mix, then the chemical reactions will start taking place then, and some reactions that take place cannot be reversed, and you might not, because it's not a complete completely dissolved all at once, you won't get the same chemical reaction occurring. So the clump itself, if it's due to fresh water getting into it, and if it's been quite a while, then I would throw the clump out and just use the rest of it. But
hang on, Cheryl, because I got to say something.
Then it's usually not so bad.
I've had the bottom of I would buy the 50-gallon buckets of salt mix, and I've had the entire bottom be a big clump. And I didn't use it just because I was worried, but nothing was spilled. It was, I don't know if it came that way or humidity, but to my two answers to the water question is I wanted to point out that I've, again, with the difference between larger volumes and smaller, I used to use a 55-gallon brute tub to mix my salt water, because I had so many tanks and so much, doing water changes. It would take a whole day to do all my water changes. And I never had any problems. If I had extra, I would let it sit. I would just add new water and salt next time. And of course, test specific gravity. But now that I only have the 40-gallon on one and the 65-gallon, and I do their water changes on I do the 40-gallon on Wednesdays. So it's before this, right? And I just use a 5-gallon bucket. So that means I have to make salt like 3 different times to do my water changes, right? At 4 different times, because I do like 20 I do 15 to 20 gallons now because I was slacking. Anyways, I have noticed what I'm using is one of those salt buckets for my water change, right? The I don't know what it's called right now, but
That's what I
ocean.
use. Instant Ocean.
It's an ocean, right? Okay, so what I have noticed is number one, the pump that I'm using is really big. It's just what I had, and I have noticed that if I let it sit, like if I have salt water left over, right, and I let it sit and I leave the pump on, because because the pump is so big and the water volume so small, the water gets hot. It will get hot. It will warm up, and I have to turn that pump off and let it sit until it cools down before I use it for anything, because it will get, warm like a bath. It feels like a bath because so just be careful about that if your pump's too big, if you're doing small water change amounts. And also, I would say, I don't know if it's because I use the cheap Instant Ocean or what, but it doesn't, I keep a lid on it, which also might be a conductive of heat. That might be part of it too. But I keep a lid on it because I've got kids and I've got who make toast and, whatever. I don't want anything getting in there. And when I remove the lid, after every time when I get down to the bottom of the water, there's crap in there. Just like crap. First of all, the bucket now has smeared spots that are like black that don't come out even with the magic eraser. And it'll just look like little speckles of crap, like dust or particles or whatever. There's always little bits in the bottom of the bucket. And I'm like, how? I had it. So I don't know if maybe it's something in the salt mix, but my overall answer to your question is I have definitely kept salt water for an entire week until the next week. And then I just add more water and more salt, but I would not leave the pump running the whole time. I don't know, you guys, can you leave it off the whole week or not?
I don't use a pump at all.
Okay.
I don't use a pump at all when I mix salt water. I do it by hand, honestly. I add my salt right before the water change, right before.
Oh, okay.
So I
you just
store
keep the water.
water. I store the water without the salt. I add the salt and put it in. And with the Instant Ocean, I haven't had any problems with it mixing. And it doesn't seem to be a problem in the tank, adding it fresh like that. The pump that's in the tank, mixes it. But I've been doing that for years and it hasn't hurt anybody in the tank to have the fresh salt water. I store everything like you in the Instant Ocean bucket. And I don't ever see anything like you're talking about. And I'm wondering if it's because you have higher humidity than I do.
Maybe that might be it.
Humidity here. So maybe you're getting like a mildew or mold type thing. And
I don't want to hear that.
Well, that's always what I think when there's blackness or like that's to me mold. Generally.
Well, then I'm going to start. I'm going to start changing my buckets out. But if you have high humidity, watch out.
Maybe when you're using those little packets that absorb moisture, those things they pack in electronics. I wonder if you tossed one of those in the top of your salt bucket, if it would help.
Maybe I could try.
I don't know.
Let Ray talk. Let Ray talk.
When you take some salt out of this bucket, make some salt water. After you're done, put the lid back on tight. Take the thing and start rotating the container around so it's well mixed up again. Let it sit, and every time after you do that, rotate it again. As far as Instant Ocean, I've been using it for 30 years now. And until now, when I'm phasing things out, I buy 12 200-gallon boxes at a time.
Oh, wow.
And so it sits around in these boxes and in the bags that are in there. And I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. Good. Okay, go ahead, Cheryl, and then we got to move on because we have a bunch of other questions. Go, Cheryl.
I mix my Instant Ocean half and half with my homemade salt water as well.
Yeah, that's
right. Salty was talking about dirty mix. Well, you don't know dirty until you're mixing up your own salt water.
We're getting dirty. Okay, Cheryl, go ahead. Wait, hang on. Ray wasn't done. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, the chemicals I use for my homemade mix are supposed to be suitable for like human use, but I still do find particulate matter, very fine stuff that I find that comes in along with the salt at times.
Yeah.
And mostly that will come from the water softener salt that I use.
Well, and Ray, we're lazy. We're not making our own salt. Okay, it's not going to
Well, I
happen.
was looking at the amount that I used over the years there because I used so much of it that it was much cheaper to mix my own up and then
I
mix
know,
it in half.
I know, but still, Cheryl, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when I mix salt water, normally I will top off tanks, basically, depending on what I've got, anywhere from every second day. Sometimes it's a week. It depends on whether I'm dealing with fry. And the thing is, what I don't want is a salt mix sitting around. I want it to be absorbed and turn into, I can check the specific gravity, and for other things, and then I will top off tanks. So I typically don't mix a whole lot of salt at any one time, but I have 3 different brutes that I use. One for fresh water that's just
Oh, okay. Go on. I was trying to
and
understand what
then
you meant
two
by top
others,
off because you don't top off with salt water. But go ahead.
right,
Go ahead.
and then 2 others that have salt water that were added at different times.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
I trade them out every other day. I know it
That's
sounds
smart.
crazy, but I'm anal.
No, you're careful,
Well,
which
I
is
mix
not bad.
salt
Hey,
water every day, 5 gallons, because I'm replacing what I siphon out at mealtime. So I am topping off with salt water as well
When
as fresh water.
yeah,
when I
but I
got
will
these
say,
new
okay, but
ones,
wait, time out, guys. We're all talking at once, and we do have to move on. I'm going to let you speak, Cheryl, but I just want to say, great point, Holly. If you've got a lot of tanks or big tanks, that's going to be a different story, especially with seahorses and fry. And if you're siphoning a bunch, I totally agree with you there. I actually do just use still fresh water for that because I just don't siphon as much because I don't have fry, right? And I don't have a ton of seahorses. So I don't have to siphon as much because I've learned what to feed the tank. And then my specific gravity, I mean, I know it does go down before the water change. So I have never had a problem with that, but I understand what you're saying. Okay, Cheryl gets on the water and then we got to move forward.
okay, yeah, real quick. Basically, if I have neonatal fry,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to need a 20 to 25% water change daily initially, which means I have to beef up my mixture of salt mix.
Mm-hmm.
As they mature, I can back off of that. But it's one of those these are the what I call the little things that most people don't think about until all of a sudden they start realizing, well, I got to keep the specific gravity about the same, so I have to reduce it, and then I have to have it ready at least every 24 and preferably every 12 hours because I'm going to be siphoning off 20 to 25% of the water volume in that system. And this is another place where a lot of people stumble because they're thinking, well, I can mix this up for a week and I'll be good to go. Well, no, it's not going to work because your specific gravity is going to increase as the evaporation goes with the water you've already mixed.
However, before anybody watching this freaks out, Cheryl's talking about a bunch of fry tanks, right? If you have a 40-gallon all-in-one with 3 seahorses in it, you do not have to do that every week. I make salt water once a week. When I'm doing water changes, if there's some left over, I will let it sit. The only thing I do is if I've left the pump on, I'll turn it off so it's not warm. So I want to make sure it's the same temp as the tank. I don't go to like crazy details to make sure. I'm just feeling, okay, it's the same temp as the tank. And check the specific gravity. If evaporation has caused it to go up, add some distilled or some, ROTI, voila. Okay, and I wanted to say Salty Reef commented that you're going to do, I've been trying to get done a shorter Seahorse setup tank because you guys know my big Seahorse setup tank I did with Dan and it was like an hour long, more than an hour long. I'm trying to do a shorter one. So I'm so excited. If you're going to do a complete Seahorse tank setup video, And so that and the fact that you are gonna, because Salty is the one that's gonna end up selling captive bred seahorses and captive bred coral and macros that can go with seahorses. So y'all need to go to Salty's channel and like it now, because he's going to come out with some videos and some products that we're all going to want. So thank you, Salty. And when you do get your complete seahorse setup video, heck, maybe I won't even make a new one. Maybe I'll just share yours. So good job. And then we have another question. We got to move on. All right. Zen Ginger said, does Aptasia only live in rocks? Like, could I cycle a tank with some good bacteria and okay pests and then take the rock out and sterilize it before adding the horsies, or no? Why not, Cheryl?
Because the Aptasia, you're not going to see it, but if you've got Aptasia, it's not going to just be on rocks. It's going to be on the glass. If you have sand, it's going to be on the sand. It's going to hide in rocks that you will never be able to see. You're creating a disaster, bottom line, in my opinion.
And the other
I
point,
haven't seen Aptasia in years, but I guarantee you, the only cure for Aptasia is a flamethrower.
and I would say what she's saying is true, especially if you start trying to get rid of Aptasia in the tank. If you try I've tried every damn method, right? I know people swear by lemon juice and gluing them and Jozad juice and all. I've tried. When I had an Aptasia problem, I tried all of it, and it wasn't. I had dry rock that I cycled the tank with, just dry rock. And then somehow I had Aptasia, probably from a macro I added because I hadn't quarantined it, right? So we can talk about that endlessly. But my point is that when you try to remove Aptasia, kill it any kind of way, it releases spores and then it's in the water. It's everywhere. It's like leaves, right?
Yeah.
So I would definitely agree with Cheryl that if you're gonna worry about pests, which I think you should, then definitely if you're buying live rock, cure it, bleach it, cycle it separately. If you want to cycle the rock in the tank, that's fine, but clean it first and really clean it or cure it, because once it's in the tank, it's in the tank. Anybody else?
I have a dear friend that I've known for many years,
Mm-hmm.
and I was working with him to help him get started with seahorses. And he went into a local fish store, and they sold him, quote, live rock. And then he bought some seahorses from them because it didn't look too bad. It seemed like things were going well. Next thing he knew, he had a massive outbreak of Aptasia, hydroids, flatworms, and he literally lost everything. And I wanted to cry.
Well, I can help you get rid of Aptasia if you have to, because I've been through it. But it's crazy. It's awful. And Zen Ginger said, okay, so Aptasia is like freshwater hydra on steroids. Yeah,
it's an anemone. It's a kind of an
over 15
anemone.
years since I've seen Aptasia.
Mm-hmm.
I will not deal with this crap.
Yep,
yeah.
The only reason I try to back it up a bit, because Cheryl's giving you all the right answers. I back it up a bit because she's dealing with like multiple tanks with fry. So like when we're talking water, I'm like, wait, she's right. But if you're just doing one tank, it's a little bit less, it's a little bit less important for all that. But okay. And this is actually Francis. Francis said, I believe I'm ready to host another seahorse species. Guys, Francis has been on this channel. He's keeping combs. He's keeping barbori. Didn't he have another species? You guys remember Francis that Cheryl helped?
Combs.
Yeah, he had combs.
He had barbori too.
Barbori, fuscus.
Oh yeah. So now he's
zebra, which you will never get unless you have a hyperbaric chamber and legal authorizations from the Australian government.
Right, but wait, Cheryl, let me ask his question before we start answering it. He said, I believe I'm ready to host another seahorse species, but would like to hear the most interesting characteristics, quality of owning interesting characteristics, quality of those owning other species still hung up on the combs. All right, go
Francis
ahead, Cheryl.
And I know each other.
Mm-hmm.
We've had long discussions together. Hippocampus combs are definitely a different world in that they are a reef-dwelling species. However, they also are very narrow-bodied, more similar to CUDA. At one point, they were considered part of the CUDA complex. They are also considered to be nocturnal. At one point, the word was they were nocturnal because of the collections that were being used to ship
Wait, which species are you talking about?
hippocampus combs.
Okay, okay, but he already has combs, so he's wanting to know about other species.
Yeah, but well, the point is this species does not function like erectus or ingens or CUDA or abdominalis or anything else. They
So Cheryl,
are
wait. I know, but besides combs and barbori, what are some other species that hobbyists should keep that you suggest and why?
erectus are great. Dots are very cool.
What?
Uh, dwarf seahorses,
Oh,
zots.
okay. See, I disagree with that.
Yeah, I use the slang. Uh, Reed eye are harder to raise. They produce much smaller fry.
But remember,
However,
we're just talking about people that just want to keep a pair of seahorses, not fry.
abdominalis. They're
Yeah.
multiple species, and they tend to do very well. They're very hardy. Hippocampus whitey is questionable right now, although the Australian government has been working on that. Some of the others would be
Cuda?
breviceps.
Yep. Reviceps.
They have strong potential. What's the one? It's in Hawaii. Any of the CUDA complex species, which are numerous because they have not yet been determined to be separate species, tend to do very well.
Mm-hmm.
Hippocampus zebra is off the Richter scale. Don't even try it.
Right, absolutely. And I agree with everything Cheryl just said. And I would say I personally have kept Cuda, Barbori, Erectus, hybrids, piebalds are still Erectus, and I feel like there was another one, Reed Eye. Okay. And she's absolutely right about if you're talking fry, then you're talking a different story. If you're talking about just keeping a pair of seahorses, all of mine were captive bred. First of all, I should say that. The Erectus were the easiest, absolute easiest.
Yeah.
They are so easy. They're very friendly, right? When
They're
I disagreed,
so friendly. I love their personality. I would always say, and the longer you have them, they get to know you and
yep,
interact with you. They're very
absolutely.
cool.
And I would say that the hybrids are the same way. They're a little shyer than the pure Erectus, but when I say hybrids, I mean Erectus Reed Eye hybrids.
Yeah. Sometimes they'll look like
And then
sometimes they'll look like this,
right.
and they change.
But I'm just talking about their characteristics. I'm just because I think that was the question. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. And then we'll get on to your next questions, Francis. I promise. I'm trying to rush these along. I'm just trying to get the questions out, make sure everybody gets answered. So my answer would be Erectus easiest, hybrids second. Second easiest. Reed eye are a little in my case, right? Because every seahorse is different. We've talked endlessly. Holly's talked about they have personalities, right? But my reed eye were friendlier than other people have talked about. Like I did have to start off with target feeding them because they were kind of standoffish. But as I kept them, they got to know me. Then I broadcast fed. I've got plenty of videos on my reed eye. Then the Barbori were the most.
For 1 second. The reed eye are difficult because they produce much smaller fry than Erectus.
Right, but remember, I'm just talking about keeping a pair of seahorses.
Okay.
Right. I'm not trying to cut you off. Go ahead and finish, Cheryl. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying there's differences in the size of the fry that each species produces, and differences in the way they reproduce that can make them much more difficult or much easier.
Right. So if you're talking about breeding, again, don't listen to me at all because I'm just talking about keeping a pair of seahorses and what you're going to face with them. Yeah. No, Cheryl's on it. She's just trying to make sure you know. But anyways, the Barbori were the most standoffish. I could never broadcast feed them. I always had to use a baster. They would not go to the bottom of the tank for food, period. They'd go to the bottom of the tank, and I did have a tall tank, just for the record. But they stayed on the rock most of the time. They danced together. They were thinking about breeding, and then my mother-in-law forgot to turn back on a pump, and I lost them. That was my favorite pair of seahorses. I did have Barbary one other time, and I had the same. I would say the most standoffish species. Francis, I know you already have Barbary, so I would love to hear your opinion on them. But that's one where you gotta love seahorses, and I would not make that a beginner seahorse. So like they were my favorite pair that I ever kept was the Barbary, but I would have failed with them, I think, if I had kept them as the first species. So again, Erectus, hybrids, Reedi, and then Barbori. Keep Erectus first would be my opinion. I also kept Cuda, 2 different species of Cuda, and they were the Helonius, I think, is the species. The really bright orange and yellow ones, they were a little standoffish. The regular species was not. They reminded me of a mix between. They kind of were like the hybrids, not as friendly as Erectus. But
the problem with Cuda is we call it a Cuda complex. Yes. Because there's still a number of species out there that are all very similar, live in different parts of the world. And as we're now learning more and more DNA and testing is going on, we are starting to realize they are actually separate species. And so when you talk something like Barbary, you really aren't at this point sure what in the heck you're going to end up with.
Barbori aren't part of the Cuda
Not
complex.
Barbori, Cuda, I'm sorry.
You meant Cuda. No, it's okay. Absolutely right. But again,
it's been a long day.
No, I know, honey, and you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I'm just trying to make sure any beginner, like we start talking about the scientific stuff and the breeding of fry, and everybody has wants to know all this information. But I try to bring it back to look, this new person keep a pair of seahorses, and Francis is definitely not a new person. Cheryl helped him save some combs. He started off with the hardest species, in my opinion, combs and Barbori. But like the Barbori, you'll know what you're doing. Cuda, when I say Cuda, I did talk about 2 different species. Cheryl's absolutely right about the scientific stuff and the taxonomy. But for somebody buying captive bred Cuda, if you can find them, then the breeder will be telling you they're Cuda and you can trust them. That's unless you go to a respected breeder. And then okay, go ahead, Cheryl.
Combs were considered part of the Cuda complex, to give you an idea of.
Right.
That's going back many years ago. And that's how far off we still are on what we've
figuring it out. Absolutely. The only thing I did disagree with Cheryl on was the Zosterae. I'm one of those people that I would not. I've never kept Zosterae.
Zots are Zots.
They're a pain in the butt. They're like fry. You have to feed them live foods. Yeah. No way.
The best person of ever keeping Zots that I've ever met was a lady. She moved up to Washington from, I believe it was Oklahoma. She set up a 40-gallon tank, put in massive amounts of pods, grew the pods out, and ultimately added pairs of Zots. And the difference between hers, where they would come out with 15 to 17 at a time, and about half the size of what other people were getting as adults. But it was an experiment she did, and she blew everybody out of the water.
Again, I love you, Cheryl, but I'm talking to new people who want to keep the easiest seahorses. And then all I was trying to say is Zosterae are like keeping fry. So a lot of people will say, oh yeah, keep Zosterae because you can do a smaller tank and blah 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 blah. But they're actually more work because you have to.
They're sensitive too because they get hydroids. Every little thing, because they're so little, can hurt them.
Absolutely. And Shyla, I was going to make that point too. I'm so glad you did. Shyla has had whitey eye for 5 months, and you said they're just kidding because how hardy they are. but they are. If Chris would disagree, he would say whitey eye or like erectus. So I've never kept them. I can't say, but Chris Carey has kept multiple of them, and he recommends whitey eye. So Shiloh, we want to keep in contact with you because again, it's easy to sit here and say, oh, you can't keep zebra. We know that because nobody's kept them. You can't keep, or these guys would be really hard because of this. But if I haven't kept them, I'm not going to say that. You know what I mean? If I'm talking hobbyist to hobbyist, if that makes sense. So, and then Francis did ask, I feel some species are more susceptible to bacterial health issues, though, correct? And before anybody else, I want to say, again, you can't find most of these species by reputable breeders because you might be right. So if you buy a pair of combs at a store, you're likely going to have more problems. I don't think it's the species. I think that they've not been captive bred enough.
Yes.
Is my opinion.
I agree.
And Ray, I know you wanted to say something about abdominalis, so please.
Something about what?
Of captive bred combs.
Yep.
They were actually wild caught combs. I'd had combs before them. I paid $30 a piece for 2 emaciated seahorses. They looked like Biafran children. They were horrible. I spent 6 months patching them back up. Spent over $300 on buying live, true mycid shrimp for them so I could do the deworming. Jumped out of bed every morning before the crack of dawn to see if they were even still alive. And they lived over 9 years in my house and produced.
I'm clapping.
But
I'm just clapping for you. Good, awesome.
But I'd already spent a couple of years working with that species before I was even able to get to that point.
So I think the real point there is that buy captive bred from a respectable breeder. If you see a pair of really cool looking seahorses at a store, but they can't tell you what species it is, or that they don't look like what the species. They say erectus, but they are this big, or whatever. Don't buy them because they're not. You're going to have trouble. Dr. Cheryl, hang on. Dr. Cheryl actually helped Francis because when he got the combs, and Francis also said that fry info is good to know too. Absolutely. Again, Cheryl is the fry master. Okay. I just always try to back it up because I always worry that somebody's going to come to the channel and want to keep a pair of seahorses. And we dive into all this CUDA complex stuff and they're like, whoa, so I just try to not dumb it down, but bring it back to the hobbyist level. Okay. Seahorses, it's different. But the fry info is absolutely important. I just try to separate the episodes. But Cheryl's right on. I agree. Dr. Cheryl's the one.
It's just one of those things where so many people can get sucked into buying seahorses that are not viable, have virtually no chance of survival. That pair of combs I got would have had no chance of survival if I hadn't already been working with combs for a couple
of years. You had experience, exactly.
And it's one of those things. My favorite one, Tammy Weiss.
Of course.
Okay. Well, Tammy found a fish store that was selling neonatal combs as dwarf seahorses. And I mean, she posted it all over from here to heck and back. That was a number of years ago.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where this kind of stuff still goes on, and we have to be aware and help other people sort out what is out there.
Absolutely. But let's really quick, just for Francis's question, are certain species more susceptible to bacterial protozoa and health issues in a captive setting? Yes or no?
It depends on the species.
Okay. All right. Is there any species you would say to avoid?
Oh,
I know that was a tough one. I know.
Yeah. There's a lot of species that are going to have problems. Again, it depends on how they're being kept, how they were harvested. It's like hippocampus zebra. Let's go collect some hippocampus zebra. Well, the problem with hippocampus zebra is they're deep water species, and the only way they're being able to bring them to the surface and keep them alive is in hyperbaric chambers. Would I recommend them for a neophyte? No.
Right.
But if you don't know this, or you don't know the person that's selling them or advising you, how do you know what you're getting?
Right. And I would say, and we're going to go to Ray's comment real quick, but Francis, I saw your comment that you're keeping the Hystrix, not the Barbori. I'm sorry. I knew that. I apologize. But the Hystrix, I would say, are even more um, worrisome. I did have a pair of Hystrix that I learned were wild caught later, and I had nothing but trouble with them. So again, hats off to you for succeeding with both combs and Hystrix. Thank you to Cheryl for helping you. And I would just say again, if you see a species in the store that looks really cool, but it does not look like the things you see in our post, then call one of us, put it online, something before you buy, because chances are it's not. If you go to a respectable captive bred breeder, you're going to get what you're paying for. And as I said earlier, if you're talking about characteristics, I can't tell you if certain ones are more prone to bacteria, especially because, as I've talked with Ray about endlessly, it depends on the specific seahorse. You can have
Mhm.
10 erectus and one or two of them are more prone to disease because of their stress levels of whatever you just never know. So there's no real answer to that. But when I was talking about how my barbori were pickier about eating, that kind of thing could be a problem. The shyer species, I would say, are more prone to stress. But Ray has been wanting to talk forever, so I want you to be able to speak, Ray. And also, you said abs are easy to keep, but it's not because they have more resistance, immunity, but the fact that they're kept at lower temperatures. So Ray, go.
Well,
Yeah,
Wait,
they're
let
the,
Ray go. Let Ray go.
okay.
they are the easiest, and it is because of that lower temperature. And it's of the 7 species that I've kept, to talk on them, I can't say that one species that was more prone to problems than another, but individuals within each species could be more prone. And that's just like we're talking about the human race, and I keep mentioning that you've got people that never get sick, you've got people that are always sick, and you've got people that are somewhere in between. Seahorses are going to be the same way. It's just that there seems to be uh, a preponderance of ones that are more prone to having problems more than the preponderance of them being not going to have problems. But it's
Gotcha.
out of the 7 species, I didn't find any one that was worse than another.
What was the 7 species, Ray?
Oh, Angustus, Barbary, Reedi, Erectus, Combs, the Zostera, uh, trying to think. I
Well,
always,
and
I always miss one there.
it's okay, abdominalis. But so aside from
Yeah,
temperature with the abs, you said the abs are the easiest, but that's because they are at a lower temperature, so the bacteria is less of a problem, and that
yeah.
makes total sense.
There doesn't seem to be as much parasitic activity at that lower temperature either.
Well, I believe that. That makes sense to me too, because the
Yeah.
parasites are used to the higher temperature. But Ray, with the species that you kept, were some of them more difficult? Not because of bacterial, but like what I was talking about, like my Borbori, I had to feed them a certain way or they wouldn't eat, or
Well, you
whatever. Did
know
you
that
treat them all the same?
we've already discussed this. My barbs, I never had any problem with getting them to eat or anything. All the problems that you had, I never experienced.
Yep, yep.
So it's
And
just those ones.
Well,
mine could have been the fact that I'm not good with tough love. If my seahorse won't go to the bottom to eat, I'm gonna feed him at the top because I
Uh,
love him.
well, I
But
wanted to point out real quick too. I saw Francis was talking about different species, and he said such as piebalds, but piebalds are not a species. They
no,
are
they're not.
erectus. They're just a color pattern.
there
Right.
can be actually several different species. We're now seeing it in Reedi and uh, who was it? I forget. Anyway, recently got a piebald and a dwarf.
Wow. And Shyla said, "Be
So
careful
it's
when you."
like a pinto or a paint horse. It's just the color
Yeah.
pattern on them.
Yep, Seahorse Corner has them too. It's really about lack of color, actually.
Yeah, Heather has them.
Yep.
Yeah, she has some really cool looking ones, but yeah,
So
they're
they
just
lack color in certain
yeah.
places. Yeah. So I'm sorry if I mistook that by saying it was a species. It definitely is not. You're right, Holly. And Shyla has said, be careful when you buy from an LFS. Recently, she found out that the pair that she was actually, or like, found out that my pair was actually kept in a system mixed with other species, which again is dangerous. Francis is talking about these cool species, combs and hystrix, and he's looking at some other ones. But the thing is, he's keeping them in separate tanks. You do want to stay away from mixing species besides erectus and reedi and the hybrids or the piebalds that are actually erectus. And Francis asked, are there any local member hobbyists who breed combs besides Cheryl?
I'm not going to comment right now.
Well,
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
I'm just saying yes. They're difficult to keep. Francis has had some in California without formalin. The thing is, I mean,
The vet bill was $2K.
the
Woo!
the problem with combs is, first of all, they're considered a reef dwelling species.
Mm-hmm.
They also are considered nocturnal, which is not necessarily correct. And they used to be more readily available and much better. Now, with problems associated with CITES and bringing them out of Asia, it's becoming virtually impossible to get healthy specimens. I know of no one at this point in time that has any healthy
Right.
combs.
So basically, if you buy combs at a store, you're going to go through what Francis went through and have to deal with
Yeah.
Dr. Cheryl to fix them, get formalin, have a $2,000 vet bill. You're much better off. I think my answer overall is it is very unfortunate that the current good breeders don't have a bunch of species. When I first started, I was able to get different species, and we're not now, but it will come back. And I would say until it does, wait, buy erectus, buy the species that are available from the respectable
Yeah.
breeders. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay, you guys, go ahead.
It's one of the things where some people have tried to breed combs. Sometimes they have some success, but typically they're selling them for 15 to 20 bucks a pop at 2 inches in size. They're not going to survive. This is what's going on in the U.S. at this point.
Well, and that's why I'm so glad that people like Shyla come, because if you're where Shyla is, or if you're in Australia or Canada, different species are available, and I can't comment on whitey eye. I can't comment on some of the Augustus, and those. So we need people like Dan and Shyla that are not in the U.S. that can say, well, whitey eye are like erectus. They actually
Yeah.
are. They're just smaller, and you guys can't get them there. Boo. We need to get Chris back here.
I would like to give a thank you
Mhm.
to one of the most best breeders that I have ever known. He lived in Australia. He and his wife started raising seahorses.
Mhm.
And on September 11th, they sent their first shipment of seahorses from Australia to the U.S.
Wow.
that were turned around, sent back to Australia. And because of the nature of the attacks, they lost everything.
Oh my gosh, that's
That was
terrible.
David Warland.
Well, thank you to
My
David
heart,
Moreland. That's a shame.
yeah, my heart
I
still breaks, and we're still friends, and it still makes me cry when I think about it. I mean,
well, we absolutely.
I'm sorry, I
Abs-
didn't want to bum people out, but it's one of those things where I have to
important.
respect somebody who had that degree of commitment.
Absolutely. And that's Francis just said update because of the mentorships in academic research, replication, experimental designs. He's now an AC for Signathed health issues in the Facebook exotic
Yes.
vet corner. That's awesome. Congrats.
Very cool.
Okay, guys, I keep saying we're gonna hold this to an hour, and here we are hitting 2. I gotta tell you my information. You guys can comment, and then we're ending this for tonight. We could go on all night. We love talking seahorses.
What?
But
No.
no, I want to tell you guys what happened. Okay, so I've been ticked off that I've got these 2 females and a male in a tank, and still have no fry, right? I've had Aphrodite for a year and a half. I've had the male and the female from Ocean Rider for what, you guys? Almost a year and a half. I mean, it's been over a year. I'm not good at dates. Well, you won't believe this. After all
You
the
have a
times,
pregnant male.
hang on, nope. After all the times because the Ocean Rider pair are like attached at the hip, and Aphrodite's more shy. So she's like, she kind of stays away from him. Like if I went up to my tank right now, we wouldn't even see Aphrodite. She likes her space, you know. She doesn't even like. And when the boy comes around, she'll kind of flirt, but she's more like, just leave me alone, because the boy's aggressive. You know, he'll hitch on her face, and she just doesn't. She is cool with being on her own. Okay, so I'm like, still, I have this pair that's dancing, courting. I've seen them act like they were about to give an egg exchange. I swear to God, I could tell you guys I've seen the female's ovipositor. She had something there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how to correct that?
No. Let me finish. The chick is growing a pouch. I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you. They're a year and a half old. She hates this male so much that she's turning into a boy.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Well, you need to put them in the back seat of your automobile, take them to a drive-in movie, and not harass them and let them watch the movie.
No, I am ticked off. I could tell, this male's very aggressive. He is. But how can you keep a seahorse for a year? That means it's over a year and a half old, and then it grows a pouch. She's growing a pouch. She's got a pouch. Ray, I see you smiling. Do men just rule and girls drool, or what?
Yeah, Dan has reported exactly.
You get all the odd ones. I've been in it a hell of a lot longer, and I don't run into that. So,
I mean,
Dan
I'm like,
has reported
Aphrodite,
this.
you're going to have to come out of your shell, because now you're with 2 boys. I'm going to have to add another girl, because she's shy. She does not like them.
Candy and Scrappy Doo are still going through the motions, and they have been, for over a year, and they still don't have fry. And I've got, all the ones in my grout tank. I now have 1 male and 6 females. And none of the females that I can tell at this point are growing any pouches. No.
No, I was like, what? And because I looked, and it was like black right there, and I was like, is something wrong? Maybe because the tank got cloudy, maybe because I haven't been taking care of it well, maybe she's sick. Oh God,
Maybe she's a man.
She's a man. And I mean, I'm just saying, I have never been a believer in this stuff. I've seen a very small Seahorse Corner. We talked about you earlier. I can't remember what, but Holly will remind me in a moment. But yeah, no, I've gotten a pair that's barely old enough, like they're 3.5 inches. And yeah, I've seen a female grow a pouch, but this is a year and a half old. It is insane. I think this male is just so aggressive, and the females just don't like him so much. I just got a bad male or something, because I'm telling you, I wouldn't be surprised if Aphrodite grew a pouch now. They just don't want him.
Well, maybe Aphrodite will like the new male.
Maybe.
Maybe the name.
Maybe
let me give you a quick one.
Wait. Hang on. Maybe I should take the male, the original male, and put him in the 65 with the others, and let Aphrodite and the girl turned male see what they do, because he would not be as aggressive. I just couldn't believe it, you guys.
Are they friends already? Do they hang out? I mean, do
not
they get
really,
along
because
with 2 girls?
Because wait, hang on, Cheryl. The girl has been running from the male. The male chases her, and she'll dance with him, but Aphrodite's hiding. So now I'm really thinking
Aw.
about taking the male out,
There you
putting
go.
him in the other tank, letting the nice male that just turned male and Aphrodite have a play.
There you go.
I'm a
Yeah.
Seahorse seeing this. And wait, Shiloh, I'm glad you reminded me. We were talking about your piebalds, Heather, and you could say more about it because we were talking about piebalds are actually erectus, but they just have a lack of coloring and they're special when they're born and that you have some. All right, Cheryl, go ahead.
Okay. I got up one and knew I had a very, very large pregnant male I gotten from Draco Marine, and he's delivering fry. And I'm sitting there watching him, and all of a sudden I see something funny in my 90-gallon that's like 3 feet away. And I realize I've got fry in that tank. So a little bitty weenie male who selected a little bitty even smaller female produced over 100 fry in the 90-gallon tank. At the same time, the pair was producing a couple hundred fry in another tank. My point is, even the little bitty guys can really surprise you sometimes.
Yes, but have you ever been surprised by a girl being so sick of her male counterpart that she grows a pouch after a year? I mean,
Yes,
this is my luck,
I
y'all.
had
This is my luck.
I had another pair. They I moved them to the 90. I raised them, and they were dancing, courting constantly. This went on for at least 6, 8 weeks. And I got up one morning because they were always dancing together and totally tight and everything. Got up one morning, looked in the tank, and they were opposite ends of the tank. The male that had been courting obviously had a pouch, and his future mate at the other end of the tank had developed a pouch.
Yep. See, that's what just happened to me. And Zen Ginger said, "Wait." So besides a pouch, eventually, and this is not normal, as Ray said. He's
Yeah.
had seahorses for years. This is not a normal. This is my luck. Okay,
It
I'm telling you.
can happen, very rare occurrence.
This is because this male is extremely aggressive. I don't know if this was a male that was just developed really late. That's possible. So you're not guaranteed if you buy a pair, but it's never happened to me before either. I've seen, like I said, teeny tiny, what look like girls turn into boys, but this has never happened to me. Never happened to Ray. Apparently it happened to Cheryl, but she know how many thousands of seahorses she's had. Holly's never seen it, so don't worry about it. But the question was potentially seeing an ovipositor during breeding behavior. Is there a way to predetermine male and female seahorses? And I would say once they're 4 inches, you're 90% sure you've got male and female. They have very different body shapes. I swear I think this is because this male was just so aggressive. And I've told you guys before, I've had aggressive males before. I had to throw them in a tank by themselves because they couldn't get along with the other seahorses and they had a bachelor pad. This one might be the start of my next bachelor pad because he's very aggressive. He's just on her. I mean, all the time. I found her playing dead. Well, him, excuse me, playing dead. This is why at first, when I looked at this seahorse, I thought maybe she was sick because all of a sudden she had a black, looking like a start of a pouch, where her ovipositor is supposed to be. And she was hanging upside down by his nose because he was chasing her around this thing. I mean, he's just very aggressive. I think she's had enough. So she said, forget it. But on a usual basis, you're not going to see this. It's just my luck.
Yeah, the females, I've had females flat out say, "Kiss my tail goodbye." Literally.
Yeah,
Go
I
had
ahead.
one
Go ahead.
female combs. Uh, there were a couple of very aggressive males that were working with her, and she was getting very annoyed, and she literally grabbed one of the males around just below his torso, pinned him to the substrate, and kicked him a new, you know what. She
Yep.
was not playing that game.
Right. Well, I just happen to have two, docile females, and well, now I
Now
have,
you don't
now I,
have
now I
docile
have, right. And Aphrodite stayed, girls. Francis, I think that's a mean person. So, Heather, I accidentally blocked that comment in the restream chat. If you could do something on YouTube, if you're able, thanks. But I don't think that was, if that was a true question, we can cover it, but I don't think it was. And Ray pointed out a pouched male will never lose it. That's true. If you get a boy and he has a pouch, he's a male. No questions.
They're done. They don't go back.
Yeah, they can't go
He
backwards.
may be gay, but
Well,
he's
they can be gay. They are actually, seahorses are very gay. The males dance all the time. Shoot, are you kidding? But you
Yeah.
guys, it is 10 o'clock. If that was a real question, then we can absolutely discuss it next week, Edwin, if it was serious. And Francis, thanks for jumping on it. And Francis did say, I'm trying to find the last comment, that you encourage anyone, any mentors and everyone else to apply. And is it a group? Facebook Exotic Vet Corner. Okay. So maybe check out the Facebook Exotic Vet Corner if you like to talk about disease treatment and or you're a mentor like Cheryl or Ray. Absolutely, go check that out. So glad that Francis is there because he's learned so much from Dr. Cheryl. But anyways, guys, I'm ticked off. Aphrodite's going to have to step up. I want my fry. I'm getting rid of this male. Not getting rid of, but he's going to another tank. Dang it. And no worries. But I am going to have to call it for tonight. Anybody have any last? Ray, we've kind of talked over you the whole night. Anything else from you?
I was just curious. One of my posts that I put up didn't show up on here on the
Okay.
stream. It's on YouTube, but didn't come up on here for some reason.
Because I have to make it come up. What was it?
It's the one about identifying the male and the female fry.
Okay, I'm looking for it. Can you tell us what you said? Or
Basically, if you have a lot of fry, you can usually tell the difference in a male and a female because the anal fin of the male will be slightly forward of the anal fin of the females. Now, if you just have a pair there, they're both going to probably look very similar. But if you have a bunch of fry, excuse me, if you have a bunch of them, you can look at a number of them, and eventually you'll see the difference in them. And once you see the difference, you'll be able to pick out which are male and which are females.
interesting. I've never been able to tell when they were fry. Holly, have you?
No. I mean, eventually they start to take on the shape, but
Right.
honestly, that fin, you're talking about that tiny one that's in the front, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the one.
Yeah, I can barely see
Yeah.
those fins anyway, so I would have a very hard time with that.
With a male, that fin will be just slightly forward, and
Huh.
once the pouch is developed, it'll come in that space between that fin and the tail.
That makes sense. That's
Okay.
really interesting. If I ever have fry, I'll check it out again. But Holly,
I
did
can
you have any?
barely see them on my adult seahorses. I can barely see that fin because my vision sucks really bad. Because that fin is so tiny, I can't imagine seeing it on the fry.
Those blue glass frames.
Yeah.
I'd have to. Well, these are reading glasses. I wear contacts because I'm nearsighted. So I actually normally see better closer up. But
Oh,
now as
man.
I'm getting older, I can't see close or far. So now I have
Right.
contacts and reading glasses.
Okay, you're talking
have-
about the little anal fin?
Microscope, Ray, or what? Those optical things like jewelers use.
Yeah, I
Go
just
ahead.
looked down to read.
There you go. Okay, go Cheryl. Go ahead and close us out. I'm gonna do a closing comment. But did you have something else?
I was just saying. So you're looking at the anal fin.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry?
So the female
Yes.
should be farther forward, and the male should
No,
be farther
the males
backward.
is farther forward. The males is farther forward, and the
I'm
pouch
sorry,
will
I
be held
reversed it.
behind the anal fin.
Yeah. I reversed it.
And Heather said,
It's late in
"Oh, I
the
know. Sorry, Cheryl. We're getting ready to end it." Heather did say you were able to get a good idea of the sex when you had a lot of fry. It's a slight difference, but fairly accurate. Well, cool. If I ever get fry again, I'll ask you for some help. But and I'll use Bray's new. But again, I've seen when they're this tiny, and I'm not talking fry. I'm talking when they're adolescents. I've seen them
Juvenile.
grow pouches. I've just never seen one this
Yeah.
big. This is a full-grown seahorse that just all of a sudden
Mhm.
developed a pouch.
Yeah,
It's insane.
it varies by species. Erectus are fairly easy to sex.
Mm-hmm.
Combs pretty much are much slower to grow and develop. They're harder to sex.
Sure.
Abdominalis are very easy because they start producing pouches like at literally a couple months of age,
Mm-hmm.
based on everything I've had from my friends. And it just depends on the species.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, okay, guys, I'm gonna have to call it for tonight. We're hitting on 10. But
You
I
have
would
to go
say
pick up your daughter. You forgot her.
no, I didn't. Thank you to everyone who came tonight. Zen Ginger, or again, any other, I don't mean to call you out, but anyone that's new and wants to have a Q&A where you can every question about setup, cycling, species, tank mates, any of that, we welcome you to come in anytime. You don't have to get on video, but you can be heard. If you get with me on the side, I can give you a link and you could come in. I think that'd be an awesome episode. So, and I will update you guys on when we're going to do the bacteria episode and the Ask Seahorse Source Part 4. But thank you again for everybody who came. We love doing this. We do it for you and for us. We have fun, but we appreciate you. With that, I'm going to say Happy Wine Wednesday. Everybody say cheers.
And when can we get Dan to show up?
I'm gonna get